Today's tennis looks clean, fast, and disciplined, but go back a few decades and it was a wild zoo of playing styles. Players weren't just athletes, they were archetypes with dominant and aggressive playing styles. You had net-charging adventurers, moonballing grinders, racket magicians, and grass court champions who lived for Wimbledon and nowhere else. But with the passage of time, all these archetypes have become extinct. In this video, we'll uncover every extinct tennis archetype, how they played, why they mattered, and why they disappeared. The serve and volley expert. The first and foremost archetype is the serve and volley style. There was a time when tennis was defined by one thing, getting to the net as fast as possible. The serve and volley perfectionist lived and died by that rule. John McEnroe's floating touch volleys, Stefan Edberg's energetic grace, and Martina Navratilova's relentless forward charges weren't just styles. In reality, they were complete philosophies. The goal was simple: serve, rush forward, and never let your opponent settle into a rally. Matches became a series of serves and fast volleys that ended points in under 5 shots. So why did this beautiful chaos die? Well, it did due to two main reasons. The first is due to technology, and the second is due to the court surfaces. The introduction of polyester strings gave returners laser-guided control, making passing shots more dangerous than ever. Courts like Wimbledon, which were fast, were deliberately slowed down, giving baseliners more time to respond. So, what used to be a high-percentage play turned into a suicide mission. Even Federer, who tried to carry the tradition, realized he couldn't live on it alone. Today, serve and volley is taken only as a surprise tactic, not a way of playing. The player who refused to back off the net has been completely erased. Once the beating heart of tennis, it is now a rare cameo. Sounds interesting, right? Well, it's just the start of an archetype. Stay with us to know about more archetypes in this video, and don't forget to subscribe. After that comes the net rusher. The net rusher. The net rusher was almost similar to the previous archetype, but wasn't chained to the serve. In this case, the players would attack any opportunity. If they found a floating rally ball, then they would charge. Also, if they got a weak slice, then they would pounce. Patrick Rafter and Tim Henman built their careers on suffocating opponents with constant forward movement. The philosophy was only to put pressure and not to wait for mistakes, to force them by cutting time and angles. In the wooden racket era, this worked brilliantly. Passing shots were low percentage and lobs were risky. If you hesitated for even a moment, the net rusher was already in your face, forcing errors with quick volleys. In short, watching them felt like a game of cat and mouse, and the mouse rarely escaped. But technology changed everything. Polystrings made passing shots not only possible but devastating. Along with that, courts slowed down, rallies lengthened, and baseliners grew stronger. So in these times, rushing the net isn't intimidation, it is a gamble. Modern players now approach the net not often, using it as a finishing blow rather than a lifestyle. So, the extinction of the net rusher marks tennis's shift from daring to grinding. Once a thrilling show of bravery, it has been replaced by baseline tactics where patience tests the nerves. Then come the moonballers, which have become extinct nowadays. The moonballer. If you played tennis in the 80 seconds or 90 seconds, chances are you hated moonballers. Their weapon wasn't speed or power, it was patience turned into torture. The players in that era would loft towering, topspin heavy balls that pushed opponents back, forcing error after error. Arantxa Sanchez Vicario, for instance, frustrated her way to Grand Slam titles, while even a young Rafael Nadal used moonballs before adding more aggression. Many of the fans hated it, commentators mocked it, and opponents feared this tactic. So, watching a moonball match often felt like slow death by rally. Yet, the tactic worked because consistency was used to beat firepower. Without today's racket tech, smashing a ball out of the air wasn't easy, and moonballs created time, height, and discomfort. But the archetype collapsed in the 2000s. Polyester strings and modern training made attacking high balls easier than ever. Players like Djokovic and Serena could take a ball at shoulder height and rip it for a winner. Moonballing became obsolete, a relic of a slower game. At the professional level, the moonballer is gone, but at local courts everywhere, the spirit of the moonballer survives. Every junior who lobs balls into the sky to frustrate opponents is carrying on this extinct tactic. Then comes the pusher archetype. The pusher. The pusher is the player everyone hated to face, as it used to be like the human backboard. The players at that time didn't aim to win or try for pace, they just kept the ball in play until you cracked. In the wooden racket era, the pusher could grow because hitting consistent winners was hard. They'd use patience, convincing opponents into overhitting. Many a talented shotmaker lost to someone who looked untalented but never missed. The psychology of the pusher was their deadliest weapon. They forced you to question your own game. Matches against pushers often ended not with exhaustion of the body, but of the mind. But professional tennis left no space for them. With modern rackets, pushing doesn't just fail, it gets you finished at crucial times. Today's baseline game is too aggressive, and without proper tactics, you're chewed up. Players like Djokovic and Alcaraz can defend endlessly, but crucially can flip defense into attack. That's the key difference. At the amateur level, pushers remain the curse of recreational players. But at the pro level, the archetype is dead, remembered only in bitter losses and horror stories told by juniors. Then comes the serve bomber. The serve bomber. The serve bomber was tennis refined into one shot, which was the ace. Goran Ivanisevic and Ivo Karlovic could fire serves at 130-140 miles per hour, racking up 30 or 40 aces in a single match. Their games lived and died by their serve. At the same time, if it landed, they were unstoppable. If it didn't, they were toast. At that time, serve bombers existed to shorten points and drag opponents into tie breaks. Fans were divided. Some loved the raw spectacle of unplayable serves, others called it boring. Critics argued that matches became predictable with a hold serve, a tie break, and repeat. But the archetype died for two reasons. First, returners evolved. Polystrings and better movement turned returns into weapons, making it harder to rely on aces alone. Second, the ATP slowed down courts and balls, giving opponents extra time to react. The pure serve bomber is gone for some time now. Players still serve big, but they can't be one-dimensional. The archetype, once feared, is now extinct, remembered as a dangerous but flawed experiment in specialization. After that comes the grinder. The grinder. The grinder was the human endurance test. Just imagine Guillermo Vilas running his opponents into the dirt, or Harold Solomon forcing rallies that felt like punishment. Their style wasn't about beauty or flash. At the same time, it was about breaking you down point by point until you had nothing left. With the players still playing, fans respected grinders' toughness but rarely adored their tennis. Matches became 5-hour wars of revenge, filled with 40-shot rallies that tested not only lungs but willpower. The grinder was a survivalist, the kind of player who made tennis less about strokes and more about stamina. So, what changed? Well, modern tennis requires more than lungs. You need more than your tools. Djokovic, Nadal, and Murray all absorbed the grinder's DNA but added offensive firepower. Pure defense doesn't cut it anymore, as courts are slower, but rallies demand not only survival but aggression at the right moment. The grinder archetype is extinct because every top player is a grinder now, but they're also hitters, servers, and athletes rolled into one. The specialization no longer exists. It was an era of survival that has been replaced by an era of complete games. With this type gone, there is another archetype that also became extinct with the passage of time. The artist touch, maestro. The artist was like tennis's poetry. Fabrice Santoro, nicknamed the Magician, shocked his opponents with slices, spins, and angles that looked like trick shots. Not only him, but Ilie Nastase turned points into theater, improvising shots that seemed impossible. The artist's purpose wasn't just to win, but to do magic with the shots. Their rallies looked nothing like today's brutal baseline battles. One point might look like drop shots, lobs, side spin slices, and trick volleys. Fans never knew what was coming next, and that unpredictability made the artists beloved. But artistry is very delicate. Modern tennis demands consistency and pace, drop shots and finesse work in small doses, but entire careers built on trickery don't survive anymore. The speed and weight of modern rallies bulldoze variety. Players like Dustin Brown or Nick Kyrgios show flashes of artistry, but even they can't rely on it every time. The extinction of the artist is one of tennis's greatest losses. The sport gained speed, athleticism, and physicality but lost magic. Today, artistry is reduced to highlights, not archetype. Well, all these archetypes may look weird to some modern players and fans today, but that's not all. Stick with us to know more about the archetypes in this video, and don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon. Moving on comes the baseline hacker, which has become extinct in modern-day games. The baseline hacker. The baseline hacker was like a chaos covered in a tennis racket. The players didn't play textbook strokes only. Instead, they relied on flat, awkward drives, junk ball slices, and a relentless pace. Monica Seles was the queen of the two-handed hacking forehand and backhand, taking the ball so early it looked like she was rushing at every shot. Jimmy Connors did the same, smashing low, flat drives with zero margin for error. At that time, baseline hackers didn't construct points, but they confused opponents. Their games were about taking the ball before it bounced up, rushing rivals, and never giving them time to breathe. Against hackers, rallies felt like wars of reaction. The opponents blink, and the ball has already gone past you. But hackers couldn't survive modern string tech. Polyester strings made the game of tennis spin, turning flat shots into liabilities. Hackers who once grew on hard, skidding shots suddenly found their weapons sitting up nicely for opponents to crush. Today, if a player hits baseline hacker in slower courts, there is a high risk. Today's game still has aggressive baseliners, but the pure hacker with flat and raw power has disappeared. It was a glorious, messy archetype, but it simply couldn't adapt to the new rules of physics in modern tennis. Another one of the most talked about archetypes is the junk baller. The junk baller. The junk baller was part trickster, part survivalist. The players in that time mixed slices, lobs, off-pace shots, and spins in a way that turned tennis into a mess-up. Think of Fabrice Santoro again, or Radek Stepanek, both of whom shocked opponents with shots that felt wrong but worked perfectly. For opponents, junk ballers were nightmares. You couldn't groove your strokes because the ball never came the same way twice. One rally might come with a moonball, a knifing slice, then a sudden drop shot. It wasn't pretty, but it was very effective. The question is, why did these shots vanish? Well, modern tennis killed rhythm breakers. With polystrings, players can attack junk balls just as easily as flat drives. Topspin and power neutralize off-pace junk, and slower courts give opponents more time to adjust. Add the sport's obsession with athleticism and power, and junk ballers were left behind. Every now and then, someone like Daniil Medvedev throws in a junk ball trick with funky shots, but they're not pure junk ballers. The archetype of the pure disruptor, the player whose entire existence was about breaking rhythm, is gone. It was frustrating, ugly, and beautiful in its own strange way. After that, there is an archetype which is known as a clay court rat. The clay court rat. The clay court rat thrived on unlimited rallies, sliding into shots, and grinding opponents into dust. Spain and South America produced armies of them in the 1,980 seconds and 90 seconds. Alberto Berasategui, Sergi Bruguera, and Gustavo Kuerten, who made Roland Garros their personal playgrounds. Their strengths, stamina, and topspin worked perfectly on slow clay. They'd chase down everything, loop balls high, and wait for the real error. On grass and hard courts, they didn't care. Their kingdom was clay. But the ATP and WTA tours evolved, surfaces became more homogenized, and clay specialists were forced to adapt. Nadal is the greatest clay player ever, but he also conquered grass and hard courts. At the same time, pure rats, who lived only on clay, couldn't survive. If you wanted to stay in the top 20, you had to be versatile. The extinction of the clay court rat is bittersweet. On the one hand, the game is more balanced. On the other hand, fans lost the unusual joy of specialists who emerged for 2 months a year and terrorized the field before disappearing again. After that comes the grass court specialist archetype, which is also one of the extinct archetypes in tennis. The grass court specialist. There was a time when grass was king and Wimbledon was faster, slicker, and deadlier than today. Grass court specialists progressed on skidding serves, low slices, and quick volleys. Pat Cash, Richard Krajicek, and Jana Novotná built their careers on mastering the surface. Interestingly, they weren't just good on grass, they were unbeatable there, even if they disappeared on clay. Their weapon was the surface itself. Balls stayed low, rallies were short, and their games of slice and volley grew more and more. It was like playing a different sport compared to clay court tennis. Fans loved the contrast, as every slam felt unique. But come today, Wimbledon slowed its grass in the early 2000s, aligning more with hard courts. The specialist's edge vanished, and modern grass rewards baseline grinders as much as it does volleyers. Djokovic and Murray win on grass with heavy rallies, not pure serve and volley. The grass court specialist is extinct because grass itself has changed. It no longer rewards one-dimensional skill sets. The result is the consistency across surfaces, but the magic of true grass champions is gone. Then comes the one-surface wonder. The one-surface wonder. Beyond grass or clay rats, there was a broader archetype, which was the one-surface wonder. These were players who established their entire careers on a single type of court, often ignoring the rest. Some were indoor carpet kings like Goran Ivanisevic, and there were clay court masters who vanished as soon as the surface changed. In short, their legacy was streaky brilliance. They'd go from winning titles in multiple numbers during their surface season to crashing out in round ones elsewhere. Due to these reasons, fans loved their unpredictability because you never knew if they'd be a champion or a flop depending on the venue. But the homogenization of tennis killed this archetype. With modern tennis, courts slowed, strings neutralized extreme surface advantages, and athleticism became universal. Today, top players are expected to be good everywhere. The big three defined this era. Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic all became all-surface champions. So, the extinction of the one-surface wonder has made tennis more consistent but less enjoyable. While balance improved, the unpredictability and the chance of a dark horse player coming every season to shock the audience are gone forever. After that comes the lefty oddball archetype. The lefty oddball. Lefties have always been quirky, partly because 90% of tennis players are right-handed. Their spins, serves, and angles naturally broke rhythm. Just imagine Roscoe Tanner's lefty serve or Andres Gomez confusing rivals with his southpaw game. Martina Navratilova turned her lefty slice serve into one of the most devastating shots in history. Lefties thrived in older eras because opponents weren't trained to handle the reverse spins. A wide slice serve in the ad court was practically an automatic point. Even Rafael Nadal, who is a modern tennis's greatest lefty, utilized this against Federer for years. But the archetype of the lefty oddball is fading. Players are trained from a young age to face both hands. Modern analytics dissect lefty patterns, neutralizing their old advantages. Nadal succeeded not just because he was left-handed, but because he combined it with amazing athleticism and spin. Pure lefty quirks no longer guarantee survival. Today, the archetype of the weird lefty specialist is gone. In today's game, lefty is just a handedness, not an identity. The days when being lefty felt like a cheat code are over. The doubles-only star. After that comes the doubles-only star archetype. There was a time when doubles specialists were household names. John McEnroe, the Woodies with Todd Woodbridge and Mark Woodford, and the Bryan brothers filled stadiums with doubles expertise. These players didn't perform well in singles, they thrived in doubles, with reflex volleys and lovely teamwork. But doubles faded in prestige, prize money, media attention, and rankings all shifted towards singles. Today, most doubles draws are filled with singles players moonlighting, not pure doubles artists. The Bryan brothers were the last great act. Since their retirement, the archetype feels empty. The extinction of the doubles-only star isn't just about players, it's about culture. Tennis lost half of its identity as doubles was sidelined. The indoor carpet king. Indoor carpet courts were once a staple of the ATP. They were fast, skidding, and unpredictable. Players like Boris Becker, Stefan Edberg, and Yevgeny Kafelnikov thrived on the slick surface, blasting serves and finishing points quickly. The indoor carpet king was almost a separate species of player thriving in closed arenas under bright lights where speed was everything. Fans loved the energy, but safety concerns and surface standards ended carpet tennis in the mid-2000s. Suddenly, this archetype had nowhere to exist. The tournaments moved to hard courts, and with them, the players lost their specialities. The extinction of the carpet king is one of the clearest examples of tennis erasing a whole style. One rule change, one shift in scheduling, and a species disappeared overnight. The trick server. The trick server was a showman. The players used to play underhand serves, exaggerated spins, and funky deliveries, turning service games into spectacles. Michael Chang's underhand serve at Roland Garros 1989 wasn't just a tactic, it was a shockwave. Even players like Mansour Bahrami built cult followings with comedic trick serves in exhibitions. In earlier eras, trick serves caught opponents off guard because tennis was conservative. They broke rhythm and often humiliated rivals. Fans loved them because they introduced personality into the sport. But modern tennis doesn't allow much room for it. Opponents are too fast, too prepared, and too analytical. A trick serve is now more meme than tactic. Nick Kyrgios kept the tradition alive, but as an archetype, the trick server has no survival space. The extinction is cultural. Tennis became too professional, too serious for consistent trickery. What was once a cheeky strategy is now just a novelty. The drop shot artist. Then comes the drop shot artist. The drop shot artist lived to humiliate. They'd lure opponents deep into baseline rallies, then feather a drop shot that barely cleared the net. Guillermo Coria, Fabrice Santoro, and even Novak Djokovic in his early years used drop shots as a central weapon. But pure drop shot reliance is extinct. Modern players hit drop shots, but as a surprise tactic, not so often. Today's movement is too good. Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Swiatek all chase them down. If you spam drop shots, you'll be punished. The extinction of the drop shot artist shows the extinction of risk. Tennis became too physical and consistent for one-shot tricksters. The artistry survives in moments, but not in archetypes. And that's it. The rise and fall of tennis archetypes that once defined entire eras of the sport. But even if these archetypes are extinct on today's courts, their legacy is everywhere, in highlight reels and in the coaching manuals.